Path. Start the timer. Welcome to part 7 of our 777 series.
Triple seven.
Yeah, that's an easy way to say it. The 777 series. And this is our 7th most memorable experience since we became location independent 7 years ago. And we are starting off hot here. And this will be something that I certainly never, ever forget because it was a meltdown that then led to one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. So, Hath, set the scene for everyone. Where are we and what exactly started to go down?
So if you've listened to our other podcasts, you might remember Trav's big Meltdown. It was an epic podcast that we had with Jason from Zero to Travel and our friend Dave Atkins, also known as Napkins.
Hashtag love napkins.
So maybe you already know where this is and you can guess, but we are in the country of Myanmar. And, you know, it's very undeveloped for tourism at this time and had just opened to tourism pretty recently within a year or two, I think, when we decided to go. And we wanted to go early, for that reason, because we've been to Thailand and it's amazing, but everyone who was in Thailand 20 years ago was like, oh, so much cooler in Thailand 20 years ago. She's like, okay.
Right, they kept saying it's like Thailand 20 years ago, which we thought we envisioned as a good thing.
Right.
Which was in some ways, but also was in the ways that Thailand 20 years ago would be a bad thing, hence tourist infrastructure.
Yeah, and there's no infrastructure. The accommodations were,
dire,
pretty bad or incredibly expensive because they were for these tourist expats or diplomats or things like that. So, it was a little bit different, and we started our trip in Mandalay, right?
In Mandalay, which to be fair, I always envision, you hear Mandalay, right, Heath, and you think just this amazing city. Like, to me, it Mandalay and Shangri-La kind of spur those same sort of things bubbling up in me. Like, oh my gosh, an ancient, cool, beautiful city, not
very romantic ideas of what this city is.
Sure. It doesn't really spur to mind like super dirty, dusty roads, impossible to find a restaurant.
It's true.
Absolutely like pretty crazy.
Not that many people speaking English, which is fine. I mean, we're in your country, but we don't speak the language in Myanmar. So, there weren't a lot of touristy restaurants or places, and a lot of the roads were still dirt. Not many were paved, and the electricity would go out every now and then. You wouldn't really know why, and the internet was pretty non-existent. And I think our first or second night there, the location Indie Life, and Travis, being who he is, was trying to reach out to the people at Elliptigo, because at this point in time he'd wanted to Elliptigo across the United States. If you don't know what an Elliptigo is, you should Google it.
Still do want to Elliptigo across the United States, but at this point that was like I was trying to get a hold of them to see if I could get sponsored.
Right. And I actually forgot about this part. I mean, you were just like the way you get, very obsessive. Like, okay, I'm going to launch this whole thing. They're going to sponsor me. I'm going to be called the Elliptiguide. I'm going to go across the U.S.
Still have that domain, elliptiguide.com.
Of course you do. And, you were getting really aggravated and frustrated because you were trying to kind of get this proposal together and the internet wasn't working. And then the electricity would go out and you were just like, ah!
I freaked out. And this was, whenever I write my bio for stuff now, people are like, oh, can we have your bio, if we're involved in projects or we're getting written up or anything like that. I always put in a tagline that we've been able to we've been able to figure out how to run multiple 6-figure businesses from 50 countries across the world and how to run it unsuccessfully from Myanmar, because I was not able to do anything. So the first couple of days there, I was freaking out. We were still in our mode where we were really pressed for cash in the first couple years of our location independent experience.
It was when we were nomadic. It was before we moved back into our house. So it was that hustle mode where we were traveling and working at the same time, and we hadn't really figured out that balance of enjoying kind of the place where you are.
When you say we hadn't really figured out,
we hadn't figured
it out at all.
So it was kind of a challenge with the internet there, because we expected to be able to do some work, but it was kind of nice because we ended up just taking the 2 weeks we were there to have fun.
Yeah, it was nice after I freaked out. So to get through the freak out, I mean, it was the first couple of days we're in Mandalay, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get, first off, Mandalay was much harder traveling than we imagined, so I was a little stressed about that. a lot stressed about that. And then, of course, the internet, I couldn't get anything done. And I just thought, like, how am I going to do this? I can't work. I don't know what we're doing. And I freaked out. I was in the hotel room, and I'm like, as soon as this internet starts working, I'm booking us flights from here.
Oh, yeah.
We're not
That's
staying
right.
in Myanmar. I'm booking us flights. And
We're going back to Thailand.
We're going to Thailand. I'm like, I don't care. It's like not even that expensive. Let's just leave this. This is not a place that I want to be. And I just don't like it. And I was freaking out and saying, like, we got to get out of here. I'm out of here. This is awful. Like, I was being crazy. And so much so that Heather actually was like, all right, I'm leaving the hotel room.
Oh, yeah. I had to leave the hotel
And
room
I'm going to go walk around the town, which we didn't like at that point at all, and with the power out. So she went walking around a dusty, dirty city that she didn't know with no power, kind of in the middle of, not the middle of the night, but late evening.
No, it was like 7, so it was dark because it was February when we were there.
Yeah, so all that instead of actually sitting in a hotel room with me freaking out.
Well, because he needed to calm down and nothing I was saying was working. And I was like, just listen, you take some time, be on your own. I'm going to go. And so that was the first part of the trip. And we decided not to leave. I don't remember how we came to that conclusion. Probably I said, well, we have these plans to go to these other places in Myanmar that are spectacular from what we've heard. And maybe Mandalay isn't the coolest spot of all of Myanmar. And our next spot was Inle Lake, which is kind of where the story turns and becomes why it was so memorable.
Yeah, so I would say that I finally just said, I'm not really going to do any work. I mean, I think I tried to do some stuff, but again, didn't understand the work-life balance then like we do now. That's part of this location-independent journey is figuring that out. But I also did a kind of in my head then say, all right, well, there's not going to be able to get much done here. So let's just forget about that. And we went to Inle Lake, way cooler than Mandalay. And then,
in our opinion.
Yeah, this is our podcast. So this is our opinions. And
well, actually, let me just throw in there that just to say about Mandalay, when we decided to rent a motorbike and we went out and we went to all these temples around Mandalay, that was actually really cool. And so there are cool things to do there.
And that was actually the next day after I was freaking out. We got up and we were like, let's just get out and see something. It has to be better than we think. And it was way better, but it was just getting out of that stress-filled hotel room. What are we going to do? It's like, let's just go and do what we normally do. Let's just explore. So we went to Inle Lake, was absolutely awesome. But the crowning moment for me, for sure, when we were in Myanmar, was going to Bagan and the temples of Bagan. And to this day, I still think that is the prettiest, most, how do I want to say it? Like, most captivating place I have ever been are the temples of Bagan. And there's, 2,200 temples spread out across this crazy huge complex.
Acres and acres of land.
And you can just, you used to be able to, after we left,
go
this
on
changed,
any of them.
You could just climb up on any of them because there wasn't that many tours.
Yeah.
So you take a motorbike out, these little electric bikes, and you just go to any temple.
Well, actually, yeah, because at the time you couldn't have a motorbike there, so you had these electric bikes,
which kind of worked, kind of different. I mean, they worked better than you having a bicycle, but they would not that fast.
Yeah.
And you just had literally hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, but tens of miles of temples all around you. No one else out there. So you'd go on this temple and you'd climb up it and you wouldn't see another person. And so it was like having your own private, amazing playground. And it was certainly a 180 from what I felt when we were in Mandalay.
Yeah, and I did a hot air balloon ride there actually, which was incredibly memorable. It's the only time I've done one, and it was just so beautiful because you're up there and you just see all these temples, and you do it at sunrise, which I'm not a morning person, but it was definitely worth getting up that early. So that was incredibly memorable. But the location independent part of this, when we first checked into our hotel at Inle Lake, and I think it was maybe the next morning. It was pretty early in the morning. We were going to be going out for a boat ride all around the lake. And we're at the front desk.
We had to get up, I think, at 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m.
Very early in the morning. And we're at the front desk. And I forget what we were trying to figure out at the front desk. But we were waiting for someone to pick us up to go on the lake. And we hear somebody say, "Travis?"
Is that you? And I'm like, they cannot be talking to me.
What?
But there's like maybe 100 white people in this town, like foreigners in this town, and probably none of them named Travis. So I turn around, and there is someone I've never met before, and her name's Diane, and she says to me, "Don't worry, you don't know me." And I'm like, okay, Good. What's going on? Here we are in the middle of very non-touristed country at 6:30 in the morning, waiting to go on a boat ride. And Diane was like, I heard you last night at the front desk talking to someone, like I guess right before I went up to my room, and I thought it might be you from your voice, but then like you went up to your room. And this morning I'm getting ready to leave Inlay Lake, so she just happened to be up really early to catch another bus, and I saw you sitting there and talking, and I knew it was you guys from the podcast. I
recognize your voice, which is so funny because it's funny that people recognize us from our voices more than anything else sometimes, I think.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, and shit. I just joined Location Indie, and so this was the very first time we had launched our community, Location Indie. It was February.
So it was less than a month?
It was we had just launched it once, and there was maybe like 60 people who had joined in the whole world. And she's like, I just joined. Like, I've been following your podcast and Jason's podcast forever. Like, when you joined Location Indie, I knew I had to be a part of it. Like, I'm half location independent. I want to become full location independent. Blah blah blah. She tells us her whole story, and I'm sitting here thinking, there are 60 people in this whole world who have joined this community, and here I am at 6:30 in the morning in a random hotel in Inlay Lake, Myanmar, and one of them just happens to A, hear us talking and know our voice, and B, somehow be in this exact spot. And I just remember at that moment thinking, oh my gosh, this is the world. Like, I want to create this. I want to create
a community.
Location, which I'm wearing if you guys can watch the video, I'm wearing the sweatshirt right now. Too. But I wanted to create a community of people who, no matter where you were, there was like-minded people. So it was essentially the very first Location Indie meetup was there in Myanmar with Heather, myself, and Diane Mayer. And it was just an incredible experience, you know, after having been so low in Mandalay thinking, I'm going to leave, all of a sudden it hits you, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's people out there all over trying to do this. There's people out there wanting to travel, and we are playing a little bit of a part in that through the podcast, through Location Indie. I just remember saying, who cares if I can't get the internet to work? Like, this just takes solace in the stuff that you've already done is out there and making an impact for people.
And the internet will still be there in 12 days when we're back in Thailand, and we can work and do all of those digital nomad-y things that people do in Thailand. So it was just a really cool reminder, and obviously it made both of us, but especially you, feel pretty cool. I mean,
I guess it was cool, but it was more validated too. Just saying, like, wow, we've been struggling through this location independent lifestyle for a year and a half. We're not making a ton of money, but we have ideas. We know there's some impact, and just to be reminded of that wow, something you've done has made impact, especially coming from, honestly, probably one of the lowest points I had ever been traveling. The first couple of days in Mandalay, that was like 2 days before that. And so that started us on the upswing big time, and then going to Bagan was like a pinnacle. And so that trip, super memorable because it was one of our first location independent trips, and it was certainly the one that I think rode the roller coaster the most of all. You know, we talk about location independence being a roller coaster. Well, here it was encapsulated in 7 days, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the whole experience of going there, and, you know, we had been nomadic, I think, at this point for maybe a year and a half or something. And, you know, it was kind of a hard time in our life. And then we would go on these trips and we'd be like, okay, well, it doesn't matter that we don't have a home base. We're out here, we're doing our thing. We're like living this life that we're trying to build. So it was just a really big deal, that whole idea of that trip and going somewhere and just knowing that we could do it anytime that we want.
And knowing that it won't always be perfect.
Yeah.
And that sometimes you just have to say, okay, it's not perfect. Let me go out and do the best I can. And sometimes that means not doing anything because where you are and where you've put yourself, in this case, Myanmar, isn't allowing you to do that. That's fine. Take a step back and just look at it for what it is and enjoy it. So there you have it. That is part number 7, our 7th most memorable experience of our 7 years of being location independent. We're going to be coming out with 6 more over the next 6 days, so make sure you tune into that as well. And Heth, we beat the timer.
I know, we did. We still have actually even 5 minutes left, so I'm not sure.
We're not going to fill that time.
No,
I think you said it for the wrong number because it's supposed to be 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So make sure you join us for the other ones, guys, and we will see you soon.
All right, bye.